All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Legal Tech Week, the show where we talk about the top news out of the week in legal tech and legal innovation. Today is the 14th of March, 2025. I am Bob Ambrogi. I write the blog Law Sites and have the podcast Law Next. And I was thinking a lot this week about where we all were 5 years ago at this time. I happen to have been traveling for one of my various trips and had to make a frantic scramble home on a flight full of panicked people with no face masks, and yeah, it was a crazy time. Anyway, so our panelists this week, we may still have more coming along, I'm not sure. But let's start with some introductions here and start. Nikki, you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name is Nikki Black. I'm the Principal Legal Insight Strategist at AffiniPay, parent company of Law Pay My Case, CasePure, and DocketWise. I write legal tech columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, and the Daily Record, and I also oversee and author our legal industry report, which just came out this week. And I'm excited to be here this week.
All right, see, new panelists are popping in by the moment here. There's Julie. All right, Joe, you want to go next?
Sure thing. Joe Patrice
Catch you as
from
you're going to take a sip.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Joe Patrice but I mean, if you waited for me to be done sipping, we'll never get in. From Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast, I am in between trips. I've had LA, Austin. Now I got a couple in New York coming. It's a busy time of the year for me, so I'm a little frazzled, and that explains if I say anything weird.
What usually explains it? Okay.
That's a great point. Normally, it's the whiskey, which I could not drink more of today because of how much the partying has been of late. So I had to go with wine.
All right. Okay. Uh, all the cool people were in Austin this week. Another one is Steve. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, Steve Embry I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. I also am a regular contributor to the Kentucky Bench and Bar magazine and one legal blog. And this past week I was in Austin at Nikki's live webinar, which Joe and I presented, which was fun. And also I was covering South by Southwest for Above the Law, which was also fun. And I would also wish everybody a happy Pi Day.
Go. All right. Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal. I wasn't anywhere this week. Yeah, just here in sunny. It's 71 degrees here in Chicago today, which I'm not quite sure what to make of that. Yeah, that's not right.
That's good to know. I hope bodes well for ABA Tech Show in a couple of weeks. And last but not least, Julie. Well, not last but not least, but Julie.
That's okay.
And then we'll get to our guest. And then we'll get to our guest panelist.
Yeah, I also didn't go anywhere this week. It's I don't know, 50 degrees in Toronto. I'm trying to do the conversion, so not super sexy over here. I write for the Canadian Bar Association, Canadian Lawyer, and also the Walrus. Good to see you all.
You could tell us the temperature in Celsius, but none of us would have any idea what that means. So
So I have a quick theory before we do the next one that I'll share. I think we were expecting Caroline Hill tonight. I'm not sure. I think because we messed around with it a few years ago, I think the UK's on a different daylight saving time. So she may not actually know what time we're doing this.
yeah.
Yeah, I think they do it later than we do now.
I do. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if that's the issue. Anyway, sorry.
Interesting. All right. Well, she'll be by herself. So she'll be coming on it just as we're wrapping up here. Is that hopefully that would be good. She could throw in something at that point. Anyway, I have saved introducing our guest panelist, who some of you will know has been a occasional panelist on the show from time to time, and was part of our live panel that we did at ClioCon this year. But Joshua Lenon is joining us, and joining us because there was some kind of big news this week from Clio, and something we're going to be talking about. So we thought it might be good to get somebody who could go straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and tell us a little bit about it. So, Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. It's always great to be here with you and the rest of the panelists. For those who don't know me, I'm Joshua Lenon. I'm the lawyer in residence at Clio, which is a company that makes software for law firms. We are based out of Canada, so I'm on the other side of Canada from Julie. I'm in Vancouver, where it's currently 8 degrees Celsius. So to make Julie feel at home. Yeah. Times two
You are
plus
still based in
32,
Canada
Joe. It's
because there
not
was
a
some
hard conversion.
you are still based in Canada because there was some confusion this week because a lot of people said, why are they based in Dublin now? Because there was at least one news story that went out saying the Dublin-based company Clio. And I know
So
yeah.
that does kind of lead into our news. And we announced just yesterday that we've made our first international acquisition. We've acquired a company out of Manchester, UK called ShareDo, and they make case and practice management software designed specifically for large law firms. For this audience, they'll mostly think of the AmLaw 100 or AmLaw 200, but firms of that size globally is what this company actually services. And we've now brought them in as a part of Clio's package. We've always been approached by Big Law. We've been utilized by Big Law on a practice group by practice group basis. But now we have this new software service that we can offer that I think firms around the world of this size can now take advantage of. It's a really exciting announcement.
Yeah, well, it's obviously pretty cool on a lot of levels. I mean, it's surprisingly, given how long Clio's been around and how much money you guys have raised, this is only your fourth acquisition ever, if I've got that
Yes.
right. As you
Yeah.
say, your first international acquisition. But really, it seems like the bigger news here is this kind of move up into the big law world. And I know that Clio's been kind of moving, up the law firm size scale over the last couple of years and been talking more about it's moving into the mid-size firm space. And I mean, that all makes sense because obviously you want to expand your market as you can. But can Clio actually sort of be all things to all firms? Does that really make sense for the company? What's your
So
thought
I
on
think that's a great question. And while you say that we've been moving up, honestly, what's been happening is we're kind of being dragged into those spaces.
that? Kicking and screaming, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, yeah. But we haven't always been the best fit as you get into these larger and larger law firms, right? And it has been a bit of push-pull. Like, do we design for these bigger firms and their particular needs? But does that also take away from the rest of the marketplace, right? Which is 60 to 70% of lawyers out there aren't practicing in these larger law firms. And so with this acquisition, I think we can finally, rather than having one piece of software be all things to all law firms, we can now offer some very particularly designed software for large law firms and particularly designed software for solo, small, and medium-sized law firms, and not feel like we're being pulled in two different directions, or what we're building for one doesn't quite fit the other. We can now actually focus on each market and give it the attention it deserves.
So what do the rest of you all think about this? Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Joshua. The company that you acquired is in the UK. Does it have a strong presence in the United States among the big law firms here?
Not yet. Yeah, they've mostly focused on Commonwealth countries. And so the UK, parts of Europe, including Ireland, of course. Australia is one of their growth markets as well, South Africa. But again, I think, and this is one of the things I really like about this story from my point of view, is I think it shows that legal technology is global in scope. And we often think about legal technology as a US-centric tool, right? And what we have found is this is best in class, right? And so not that it's best in class in the US, but what we think is best in class in the world, and we want to spread it around the world now. If you look at a couple of our past stories that we've worked with the whole panel on, right? We just announced a general manager for Canada and our growth plans in Canada. We have general managers out of our Dublin office, which is why some of that news story had Dublin and Australia. And so we're continuing to see growth around the world. We just held events for customers in Dubai, in Singapore, New Zealand. And so we really do believe that legal technology is a global technology. And as I wrote a while ago, we build with the idea that while it might be used initially in one place, it could be and should be designed to be used worldwide, which is a challenge, but a fun one to tackle.
Was there a reason why you guys prioritized that particular market as opposed to the US? Was it just that was the opportunity that came to you?
Yeah, again, it was the best in class software and the company. One of the things we also look for in acquisitions is culture fit. We look for people who aren't just building technology because they see an opportunity, but building technology because of the impact that that technology can have. And the leadership at ShareDo and the team at ShareDo, they believe in our mission to redefine the legal experience for all. They were focusing on a particular part of it, but now we can take their learnings and spread that globally, but also take a look at some of their design philosophy and design choice and cross-pollinate that into the markets where Clio is already pretty prevalent, the solo, small, and mid-sized firms. What have they done differently that we should learn from, and vice versa? So yeah, it was their best in class as a software and really good people to work with. And that's why we went forward with this.
So
I'm
I
gonna
might be the
cheat.
only, go ahead, Julie.
That's okay. I was gonna cheat and ask two questions instead of one. You
There's
mentioned
no cheating on this show.
Yeah.
okay, great. So you mentioned the challenge of serving all size law firms and also talked about being a global tech company, and I can already feel those challenges as you speak of them. I wanted to hear a little bit more about how you think you guys are going to manage that long term. And then my second question is, if you are looking in the future to do acquisitions in the US that kind of similar to what you're doing now in terms of serving large law firms in the US, because I can see some challenges in having a UK-based tech firm serving American AM 100 firms.
Yeah. And so I think it's less of a challenge than you think having the UK serve the US, because we can add and complement certain aspects of that with our own organization, right? We have award-winning customer support teams, right, that operate out of multiple locations to cover time zones. And so we would just build out the expertise and knowledge within our own customer support team and our migrations team and training team to help with that expansion. It's not a small lift, right? But I think it's something that we've done before with other acquisitions, and we can do with this one. So I don't feel that it's UK that's going to be the issue there. I do think we'll have to focus on data location and regionalization of data, but we've been doing that in our other growth opportunities as well. We have data centers in our major marketplaces. And so, quite frankly, we're probably going to have to get some more to serve some additional areas. So those are things that we've tackled as an organization at Clio that ShareDo can learn from and borrow our expertise, and we can grow together on. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And some of ShareDo's customers are multinational global law firms already. And so, yes, they're serving them out of the UK, but they already have offices and employees around the world. And so we'll actually be able to provide better offerings now with our global environment than ShareDo was able to offer before. Did I get both questions, or did I miss one?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep cheating. You actually, I'm gonna rephrase the first one I had,
Yeah.
and play devil's advocate here, because
Mhm.
Clio, its origin story is very much tied to the small solo law firm, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, I could see some people perceiving this as perhaps Clio moving away from their origin story. And you've spoken on this, but I just thought I'd ask directly, how you guys perceive that and how you see that moving forward.
I think if we had made this move any earlier, that would have been a concern. Because at the end of the day, there's only so many hours, so many resources that we can throw at any problem, right? But we've been fortunate to get some really savvy investment behind us. We've been able to hire really great people, both in Canada and the US and other locations, and we're continuing to build those teams out. And so we are acquiring ShareDo's whole team along with the product and the leadership. So I think it's no longer the case where we would have had to pick and choose, like, do we focus on big law? Do we focus on solo and small? Instead, we can actually have dedicated teams focusing on each, and learning and complementing each other, right? Something that a solo does could actually be a really good fit for an individual within big law. And so we should have like this cross-pollination and continue to work as an organization across them all. But I think we're really fortunate that we're at the place where we can like set aside people to just focus on this group and make sure that we're listening to them and building towards them.
Does this mean that we're going to have a bunch of snooty big law people at ClioCon next year?
We already did, but the answer is yeah. We're going to have people from firms around the world of all sizes around the world at ClioCon, and it'll be great to see what they bring to the conversations. It'll be great to have them exposed to the rest of the legal system, right? And so that they can see some of their problems aren't unique, and some of their problems are. And we can teach them best-in-class software from our integration partners and all of our great speakers, like all of you panelists who came and spoke last year. So, and I saw Richard was like, we have to have puppies. We will still have puppies. So at ClioCon. So we're not the people who have puppies at Tech Show, unfortunately. But I bet Stephen would know who does.
They'll just all
Yeah,
be Yorkshire
that booth hasn't
Terriers.
been there for a while because
It
I
was
haven't seen it for
small
several years
firm.
now.
It
Yeah.
was small firm manager or something like that. I can't remember. It was a company.
Yeah, and then they went through a local shelter here, like one of the local
Oh yeah.
one of the local adoption, yeah, like one of the local no-kill shelters were here.
The rumor is that the puppies will be back, even if they're not Clio puppies.
That's the big news.
I almost adopted. I almost went home with one 5 years or 6 years ago, wherever it was. Yeah.
There was a firm that was giving out like whiskey at one of those booths a few years ago. I almost adopted one on my way out.
Well, maybe more than one, Joe.
Mike A said beer last year, I think, right? Didn't they
I
have-
remember.
wasn't it- I think that
We
was
did
Mike A's.
champagne at Tech Show. Gosh, I think it was like 2017. So a long
I feel
time.
like at Tech Show somebody needs to give out Malort or something like that, right? Like that's the Chicago staple.
I think they had a
Like
keg,
really make it local.
like 2013, I think is when we started doing kegs at the My Case booth.
Mhm.
Well, don't let us
And
stop.
Josh, you can see how quickly the show disintegrates from important topics to really important topics.
I listen to the show every week, and so
I was
And
waiting
I
to
would
see if
argue that
anybody.
alcohol is very important for lawyers. So,
I was waiting to see if anybody was going to pick up on my Malort reference, and I'm glad that we've got at least in the comments somebody was like, "Dear Lord, no." So
I bought a bottle once, and it has lingered.
it is an intense thing. I love that their ad campaign it openly leans into it. It's like it's like something like "Do not enjoy responsibly" and stuff like that is like their slogan.
That's one of the ways tech shows has changed. This is totally going off topic now, but do you remember
Yeah.
when the the planning board, the chairs of tech show would have that fancy suite. Steve, do you have a fancy suite this year? You may have a fancy suite. I don't know. But they would have that fancy suite, and they would have like the most expensive scotches and whiskeys and all of that stuff up there. And it was just a nonstop party up in that suite. Should we expect that this year?
So that's why there will be no expensive suite, because I can't stay up late enough to have extensive and ongoing partying all night long.
There was a helicopter pad one year. It's like
And the
I think I was
several
in the-
years.
I think Jack Newton was in the elevator. Like there were like so many people. I think the elevator almost got stuck or something. I can't remember.
I have that picture.
I've been
All of us in that
on
elevator.
that
You and Jack
helicopter
Newton
report,
and
yeah.
me, and I have that
Yeah.
picture. Yep.
I missed that
Yeah,
hill.
the
I know it's
helipad
the
was several
basement,
years.
but I missed that helicopter pad.
It was at the Hilton, right?
Hilton, yeah, had to be the Hilton.
I
Yeah.
missed the
Yeah, go.
Hilton. I liked it there a lot.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. That was my favorite tech show venue because I mean, it's very easy to kind of like duck into like little quiet little areas and whatnot. The Hyatt was a little too spread out, but yeah, I don't know how McCormick Place is going to be. I guess Steve can probably.
Well, one thing that's different about the McCormick Place is there'll be windows. You can actually see outside, which will be rather startling. And the weather possibly will be better since it's in early April and not middle of February. But
You
as
never
you well
know
know,
here.
As you well know,
Never
Victor,
know.
that's an if. That's an aspiration. Let's put it that way.
We've also been there
Um,
on St. Patrick's Day, which has been good for tech show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
I mean,
actually, I mean, I mentioned this on Victor's podcast. He was kind enough to have me on. The registration is going great. I mean, it's well ahead of where it has historically been this far out of the show. So we hope it keeps up.
I don't know how
Congratulations.
that's happening
Yeah.
because I've been seeing you putting some stuff out on social media that has my picture in it, and I would think that would dissuade a lot of people from attending.
And I mean, moving to April is going to be great weather-wise. I know it's not predictable, but I predict it'll be in the like low 10s Celsius. I don't know. I'm trying to help out my Canadian friends here. Invisible number. I don't know. It's
That's like that's 50s. So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna want to be a little bit warmer than that.
okay.
Oh, but April is pretty.
Yeah.
But that's jacket weather up here. So there'll be a good chunk of
All
people
right.
who would wear shorts as well, but we don't talk about it.
All right. Any final comments or questions on Clio going to Big Law or Joshua? Any final comments on that before we move on to some of the other pressing news of the week, like cow farts or something? That was Steve's story.
That was not the transition that I was expecting.
And it wasn't farts, Bob. It was burps.
Burps.
That's
That's right, I'm
just for the record, yes.
All right. Well, where do we go? I mean, we've got a couple of sort of very different things. We'll get to you, Steve, but not yet. We've got a couple of different things on sort of different aspects of deepfakes in the courts. One of them being a kind of surprising piece of news that you picked up on this week. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So this one was weird. I saw this from a local news affiliate, and then I decided to dig into it a little bit deeper. The Arizona Supreme Court has decided, in their infinite wisdom, to create some fake AI reporters who will, Daniel and Victoria, they're called, and they will report on new cases from the Arizona Supreme Court. So the way it functions is basically like these absolutely not real human beings will on video come up and be like, hey, reporting about the Arizona Supreme Court, we did Perez v. Circle K today, and it was about this and that and the other. So let's begin with being charitable, because then I'm not going to be. So to begin with being charitable, trust in the court system is low, and they feel this is a public outreach they can do to make simple short form video. They're like 60-second TikTok kind of things, to explain what the work is that they do. And so, yay, they're reaching out to people. The downside of it, I think, is I don't feel particularly comfortable with courts controlling their own narrative, especially in ways that are structured to kind of misleadingly look like news reports. They do flag at the beginning of the video that this is an AI report from the court system, but if people were smart enough to figure that out, then they would be smart enough not to need these things to understand what's going on, right? So I'm a little concerned about the misleading. I'm concerned about the way in which AI, in the best of circumstances, is not necessarily the greatest at summarizing stuff. I shudder to think what AI doing it at the behest of the court system would be like. I think that we have already had issues with court systems trying to oversimplify and pretend that legal problems or whatever. And now you're now trying to drive the decisions, which are already somewhat misleading sometimes, especially in high profile cases. You're trying to summarize them into 60 seconds. It worries me, and I don't think that Arizona means bad by it. I think that they're trying to just raise public awareness of their existence, but they never would have been in a position to do that because they lack the resources to hire a human to actually do this in a good way. But AI has opened up the opportunity for them to do it, and I fear it opens a door to bad faith actors, and we're going to start seeing, in particular in state court systems that are a little more ideologically consistent, I think we could see this sort of, here's your AI explanation of what the court system did and how, of course, the Federalist Papers say that it's okay to quarter troops or whatever the hell they're going to do. And I worry about that. I worry about other folks not being as good about flagging that it's AI. It's not a great position, I think, but that's the intro. I'll leave it at that, and then we'll talk about it some more.
I have a heavy hitting question. At
Okay.
what point do you think that Daniel and Victoria will qualify for press passes illegally? Do you think they've gotten to that point? Like,
Yeah, I am positive that they will get a press pass. I mean, maybe not some of these places. I think I think some conferences we go to require our blood type in order to give us a press pass, but others just hand them out. So I'm sure they'll get in at some of these places.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Not the
like-
suite,
Round of
not
drinks.
the ABA suite though.
No.
What about on the show? Get them on this show. Let's get them on guest.
Oh yeah, we can bring them on. We can bring on Do Not Pay's bot. We'll have everybody over here.
Well, there's some theory that some of us on the show are already avatars.
Right.
Won't mention any
Nikki's living
names,
in a
but, you know.
Nikki's living in a simulation.
It's
But
possible.
You guys are just NPCs. You don't like that. Get used to it.
I just like one of my big problems with it is that we already, a large part of the problem with court coverage is the decline in local media, the decline in local law school. Like the at this point, it's actually accelerating. Local law faculty being afraid to speak out about things going on in the state. If you wanted, as the court system, to do more to make sure people understand what you're doing and care about it, then you should be doing more. Let's host an event and invite the law professors. Let's host an event, invite local media. Let's give a forum to local media to argue about what we do. These are the sorts of things you can do to increase awareness. Turning it over to court-controlled summary bots seems like the worst of all possible worlds. And I fear it's going to even further crowd out the kind of human connection, crowd out their comms office, crowd out local legal analysts who will just kind of like ignore it because, hey, it's, or worse, just throw Daniel and Victoria clips up there and not comment on them.
So I'm of two minds on this whole thing. I feel like on one hand, we're always criticizing courts for not being innovative, and here's a court doing something innovative and
Right.
using cutting edge technology to be innovative. And I feel like, in a sense, maybe we should applaud for that. On the other hand, I agree with you that it's misleading. All it says at the beginning, it says, "I'm Victoria,
Yeah.
I'm the Arizona Supreme Court's AI reporter." Like it doesn't say I'm AI, it says I'm their AI reporter, which to me
Good
could
point.
mean I'm the person who covers AI for the court or something. I don't know what that means. So I would think that for a lot of people watching that, they would have no idea, wouldn't get the message that this is an AI bot delivering this news to them. And that's concerning to me, especially since courts are so heavy on the idea that lawyers need to be transparent about using AI and litigants need to be transparent about using AI. And I'm not sure they're being all that transparent here.
Actually, can I jump in with a question then?
Oh,
This is a great point. So, Bob, you
he doesn't
you
listen to me.
are no, Bob, but you like work with local journalists, right? Like you
I
like
do.
lobby for that organization. Like, can you imagine if your state Supreme Court like tried to muscle in on as like a news vector?
Right. No, but there was actually just a big story this week. Local public radio in Boston did a story about one of the news chains and the Gannett news chain in Massachusetts that is using AI to create its news stories in a lot of cases. And we know that's an increasing trend. They're still doing it with editors in the loop, humans in the loop, but they're getting first drafts is basically done by AI and then having editors come in and supposedly clean it up and then publish it.
I don't I don't know with
What?
that chain that really could be an improvement actually.
You guys are so.
No
So is this
comment.
where I become the curmudgeon here? Start yelling to get off, and yell at the clouds. I'm so like annoyed by this because first of all, there is budget dollars allocated to this because we
Mhm.
know that AI is
Yeah.
not sophisticated enough that it's prompting itself to write the summaries. You could literally hire high school students, college students, someone from a journalism school or a comms program who will work for almost free to do an internship at a state court and will do the same work. They'll do it better and they'll become legit content creators, influencers, whatever, using court information. It's so it's so easy. There's so much low-hanging fruit here, but instead, because we are in a simulation, we decide to give it to AI so David and Victoria can start winning awards and going to tech shows and reporting live from Clio Cloud. It just makes me so angry because there are so many young people who actually want to get into this industry, whether it's journalism or communications, that I'm actually the most concerned about. People like us will still have jobs, but they won't because this low-hanging fruit, they decide to give it to a computer instead of letting young people do their thing. So I'll get off my soapbox, but when I read this, I was like, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it's getting worse. It's getting worse.
See, I might be in the minority here. I didn't really see the big problem because I mean, to me, it was just like because I mean, like courts release press releases all the time, and like, and if this person is just reading off a press release, it's just it's just a different way of getting that information out there that the court is already putting out there on their own. I guess the difference is, they're using the background of a news reporter, kind of giving them that sort of gravitas, I guess, for lack of a better term. But a lot of people distrust the news anyways. So it's kind of like, well, maybe they would have just better off just having like a like a AI spokesperson, or like maybe we wouldn't have this visceral reaction if it just been like David and Victoria, the AI flacks for the Supreme Court, as opposed to the AI official AI reporters or something. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was just I didn't quite see that decision. And for if any young people are watching this, don't go into journalism. Don't go into journalism at all. It's a dying industry. Don't take our jobs.
I mean, like, I just feel like if Daniel and Victoria were replaced with Max Headroom or something, I'd be fine. I could like you could see that this is clearly some kind of paid for AI situation. But they're designed to look real. They're designed to fool you into thinking you're watching a news report, despite that at the very beginning explanation that they aren't. And even that, as Bob points out, was a little shaky.
I think they haven't gone far enough. They need to take Victoria and Daniel's transcript, pop it into Google LM, and come up with those chirpy little podcasts and that'll make it even more accessible. So I think we just got to keep going with this thing, and it's going to end up being bridge the access to justice gap. It's going to be wonderful. I'm all
You know they're already working on this. You know they're like, this is fantastic. This is working so well. The podcast is coming, documentaries. The third person's getting hired. Like, ugh.
Joshua, you don't have to raise your hand around here. You're just like,
He's so Canadian. He's so polite.
I'm licensed in New York. I can interrupt you. Yeah, but you are all the experts here. I do think, and Dennis raised this, right? A good chunk of this has to be budget based, right? Courts don't control their own budget. They have just like so many dollars, and ChatGPT is free if you want to give them all your data. And since courts don't have copyright anyway, why not? And so I think it's a question of, is the court doing something versus doing nothing? And the budget aims towards nothing. That's what legislatures are giving them. So at least they're trying to do something with the budget they have. Is kind of my take on it.
They should have a version of Pacer so they could have their own slush fund that they could use to fund.
Yeah. I can't solve the problem of court funding. I wish I knew a good system. Anything fee-based is like ripe for abuse. We've seen that in Louisiana, right? And so we just, as a society, just have to agree to like actually fund stuff. And look how well that's going right now.
I think
you raised your hand too. What's going on here?
Joshua, I think you created a monster, because now I'm going to raise my hand all the time just to get to go up in that upper corner, just to call attention to myself. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is awesome.
Did you actually have something to say, or you just raise your hand to
No,
say
I
that?
just wanted to go to the upper corner. I was really excited about that.
Just don't raise your finger like you used to do.
I'll flip everyone off if I want to. In support of you.
All right. In a sort of a ironic coincidence of stories here, as the Arizona Supreme Court is promulgating deepfakes, the ABA Journal has a story on fighting deepfakes in the courts. Victor, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this was a column that that we published this week from Chuck Kellner, who's a senior strategic discovery advisor at Everlaw, and he wrote this. I thought it was a very thoughtful column about how courts might be able to combat deepfakes in the future, and how this obviously we were talking about on the show. This is going to be a problem for courts for a long time, and it's only going to get worse from here on out as the technology gets better. So good news for people out there, if they're forensic experts, if they understand how this stuff is done and they can authenticate video, you're going to be very busy for the next decade or so. Just keep your skills up and keep doing what you're doing, and you'll have plenty of business, you'll probably be in court a lot. You'll probably have to spend a lot of time in a suit, unless you get lucky and have a virtual court appearance, but you'll probably have to at least dress up or something. So that might be a problem for people like me. But yeah, it's if you're an expert in this, good news. You're gonna have work coming out of your ears for the next several years. He also suggested some other potential ways to combat this problem, including obviously changing the court rules and whatnot, which is always a monumental undertaking, as we all know. Having or taking a more procedural based approach where courts can hear the evidence on an ad hoc basis and then make the determinations, and maybe even find a way to share the price so that it's not always the worse off party, or the party with less resources that would then get saddled with the bill and whatnot, and they might not be able to afford to do it. So there are a lot of good ideas in the piece. That's why we ran into it. It was nice. It was nice and proactive in talking about a problem that is going to plague courts for the foreseeable future and whatnot. And I also wanted to plug the podcast that Steve alluded to earlier. He was very gracious enough to be a guest on the Legal Rebels podcast this month, talking about Tech Show, which I'm sure, and I think there are a couple deepfake sessions that are going to be there. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, then feel free. And we're going to be there, so
We're doing our panel.
Victor, Victor,
Yeah.
thanks for the plug. On the deep fake issue, I know most of us know Judge Shagel, and he's actually going to speak at Tech Show on it, and he's been very upset about the specter of deep fakes. I have heard a couple of forensic guys speak on it, and of course they're motivated to sort of make this a bad crisis, but they make they make good points. One is there's basically two ways to deal with them in their view. One is detection, and the problem with detection is the bad guys it's like cybersecurity. The bad guys are always 2 to 3 steps ahead of you, so detecting stuff is going to be a problem, and there's more of us than them. And the other way is with the notion of provenance, which is basically uh, a mechanism so but where the data came from, what data was used. The problem with that is the same thing. I mean, you can always defeat it if you work hard enough, and plus it's got to be more universal. Everybody has to do it, or it's not going to be effective. So they were pretty concerned about the whole deal, and so yeah, it's going to be a problem, I think.
All right, we were right. Carolina had the time wrong, or we had the time wrong. Somebody had the time wrong.
I don't want to interrupt, but I felt so terrible that I'm late. I'm ready for 20 minutes time, 15 minutes time. I'm so sorry.
You can hang out after we're all gone. We have there's
We're
no problem.
4 hours difference this week. We're 4 hours.
Yeah, so it's I can't do math.
Joe, you were right. Yeah.
Oh,
By the way, somewhat ironically, as I was spewing about deep fakes, I got a notice on my phone from Photoshop that they want me to purchase their product. So that only goes to show you,
Caroline, how are you?
yeah, really good. Apart from a bit late, but yeah, nice to be here. It's great you've got a big panel today. Nice to see Josh.
We do have a big panel. We talked about the Clio thing, and what else have we been? We've been talking about deep fakes, deep fake PR people, deep fake in the courts, and anything else?
Don't forget about the hand raising. You can raise your hand now, Carolyn, if you want to.
That's right.
Yeah, it pops you right into the top corner. You displaced Bob. Check it out.
Yeah, it changes nothing but where you're positioned in the grid that we look at. But not even all the viewers probably watch us on a grid. Some of them probably just watch who's speaking, like normal people use Zoom.
I think the important
Hi,
takeaway,
Brady.
Carolyn, is that Cleo's going to be spending a lot more time on your side of the pond.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So Jack's there in Manchester right now, and I look forward to coming over as soon as there's a good excuse that I can justify the expense report on.
Yeah, what's really funny, and I will mostly just shut up actually, because I just wanted to say apologies for being so rude and not showing. But what's so funny is we saw Ben Nicholson from ShareDo at ClioCon, and I don't know if any of you lot have talked about this already, but just went, oh, that's why he was there.
Yeah, that's absolutely why he was there. I can admit that now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So all the more reason to attend a ClioCon. See who's attending. Get a jump on your
ClioCon London.
Yeah, we can go to an event in the UK, and the temperature will be around 12 I don't know, like you make up numbers.
I think 10. We'll go back to 10.
10 back to 10.
We should just all switch to Kelvin. That's what we should do.
We're struggling with temperatures.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. We've got. I want to talk about. Well, Nikki, what do you want? You had a story, but you also had your huge report that you put out this week that you didn't put in the story log. I mean, and which is kind of to me more important than that lawyers are on LinkedIn. But I don't know.
I know, but I hadn't actually written about the report yet. So
Nikki
I
did
thought
also
it would be
report that
breaking
you can
the
find
rules.
lawyers on LinkedIn in case you were wondering about that.
Well, yeah, I thought it was worthwhile, but I hadn't written the report yet, and I felt like I'd be breaking the rules if I just put the report in there to talk about, because technically I didn't write about it. I wrote it, and it wasn't an article. It's like a report. So if
Yeah,
you're the I don't know, the king. I don't know. You're the cool kid. I don't know what you are. Like, you get to decide.
I'm gonna raise my hand and choose to opt to talk about this. It's really interesting in part because of the juxtaposition with the ABA legal technology report that came out just the week before. And that report, if you don't know, is a gazillion pages and talks about all sorts of stuff. But I had done a piece just kind of focusing in on what it said about AI, and then your report came out, which does a lot more on AI, I think, and surveys a lot more people than the ABA report. Interestingly, the ABA report was like something like 800 and something, and yours was what, 3,600 or something like that, or
20, almost 2,900, a little under
2,900. Okay. But they were the one place where they kind of agreed, or one notable place where they kind of agreed was on the extent of AI adoption by lawyers, which put it at roughly 30% or so of lawyers are kind of using it, personally using it in their law practices, as opposed to whether their firm is requiring them to use it or whatever else. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But
Oh, yeah, and the report was a lot of fun this year because we focused on 4 different main topics: generative AI and artificial intelligence, financial wellness, getting paid, and workplace transformation. And the AI questions, a lot of them were duplicates from last year, so we could actually see what the change was over time. And the other thing that was really fun about this year's, in addition to the deep dives into those different topics, was some of the members on my team had suggested we include practice areas as well as firm size. And so initially I was like, I'm not sure how we do that because people have multiple practice areas, but that's why we asked your primary practice area, and then if you have multiple, say I have multiple. And so that way we could really like break it down by practice area. And when we would filter the results by practice area, it actually gave some really interesting, and because we had such a large amount of people responding, sometimes it was 300 or 400 people, so it was enough of a group of respondents to actually have the data be notable. And so across the report, I would report the general findings from the report, but then I would, depending on where it seemed to be most interesting, break down by firm size or break down by practice area and highlight the really notable differences. And what really was, and I think that it was fun to do it that way because firm size and practice area truly do impact how you use technology and the choices that you make. And so the ability to kind of break it down in that way was helpful. There with one caveat, I think it was 1% was firms. I think there were 50 plus. And so really this was more of a smaller firm survey. And even though I did occasionally talk about the firms over 50 plus, it still wasn't a huge sample size. But that's also just because there aren't that many people in those firms of that size that have decision-making power or understand what's even being done in the firm about tech. So that also limits it a little bit. But it was a ton of fun to write and analyze all the data. And I think the design came out really nice this year too. So definitely
the design
dive
was
into
nice,
it.
actually. It was nicely designed.
Yeah, so I'll pop a link in and once
The kid in the front row raising his hand there, was it?
I just wanted
It's all
to
on you.
compliment Nikki on the report. I thought it was really well done, and I liked the practice area breakdowns.
No. Oh, Josh, you just wanted to be in the upper corner. We know that.
I will lower
You
my
saw-
hand so someone else
You
can
saw,
take the
you
spot.
saw Nikki
But-
do it, so you wanted to do
Yeah.
it too.
But no, seriously, like really, really like this one, Nikki. Well done. Great information. Thank you for putting it out.
Clio should think of doing something like that. I mean, that would be
This is Nikki's moment.
like a legal trends report or something. I don't know. It'd be a good.
It's
good
not
thing to
my
do.
moment, it's the company's moment. But this one was, the more times we produce this, the more it becomes a larger team effort over time. And so tons of people, hard work went into it by a whole bunch of different people across multiple teams. And I think that's part of what is starting to make it become a little more fleshed out and really interesting. And it was a lot of fun to do this year.
Or as Nikki might call them, NPCs from elsewhere in the company. No, I
I would kind of add to that. Joe and I were fortunate enough to be invited to speak at a AffiniPay's live virtual webinar. I think that's what you called it. But anyway, Joe and I were there. The presenters were all there, and they gave us each there were two of us in each session, and we had 20 minutes, and we each talked about not the report, but sort of the issues that were screened on. And I thought it was a very well done conference, and it's I don't know how many. Sure, it got a lot of attendance. I don't know if it was recorded, Nikki, or not, but it was fun doing it, and I thought the presentations, because it was so compact like that, it really made us sort of drive to the point and forced me not to babble like I'm babbling now.
Thanks. I'm glad you guys could make it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, and it was great. You also were, you also understood the entertainment value that you like. You had a bunch of luminaries together, but you put Steve and I together to like chat, so you like understood. Oh yeah, let's put these two guys together, which made it a lot of fun too.
The only thing that was missing
well,
is
since
they
we're
didn't give
plugging
us any
Steve's
drinks.
webinar and podcast, we should mention that Nikki and Stephanie and I are doing a panel this week coming up for the Law Droid conference on three journalists talking about stuff. I'm not exactly sure what our topic is.
We're working on it.
We're working on it.
Is that the title?
So it's going to be really
Talking
good.
about stuff.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst title in the world.
It actually
Yeah, I
sounds
think
like a
that's the
good
working
name for a
title.
podcast. I like
It
that.
really
We should
does.
create
Yeah.
a podcast. Yeah.
That's
Add
yeah,
an
all right.
AI person in there as the moderator, and you're good. You're good.
Yeah, invite Dan. Was it Daniel and Victoria, or was it David? It was
Yeah,
Daniel, right?
and Daniel. Yeah, congratulations to Daniel and Victoria on hosting the new.
Yeah. All right. All right. South by Southwest. Steve, you were at South by Southwest filing stories on a daily basis, I think, at Above the Law
Right.
as you were churning it out there. Tell us about it. It's a
Fun.
conference I've
Well,
always wanted to go to and never made it to.
Yeah, and you kind of have to understand the roots of South by Southwest to sort of get a flavor for it. It was started in the late 80s, originally as a music festival. And then over the years, they added a film track, a cultural track, and then an interactive sort of track, which is like internet and technology for technology's sake. So you've got all these different sort of interests that are converging, and as a result, it's really more educationally oriented and discussion oriented than it is a sort of a product related conference like most of us are used to. That there was an exhibit hall, but there were different sorts of exhibitors. There were a few product exhibitors, but there were more people that were engaged in the filmmaking area or the music area and things related to that. You know, I went to a bunch of sessions. I can't tell you how many they had. It spanned 7 days. I tried to go to sessions that might offer something that would be interesting and relevant to legal. For example, I went to some of the sessions by theater artists who talked about how to use technology in live theater, because that's something that lawyers will need to do in the courtroom. I went to a session on uh, survey results from rural communities because I wanted to see how the rural attitudes might affect the problem with a lack of lawyers in rural areas, and came away with that with sort of an impression that we got to figure out a way to get lawyers to live in the communities because of it. I went to a session on a really fascinating session by a futurist who talked about what the leading technology trends had been over the past year, one of which was an ability to reduce cow burping. Apparently, cow burping is a leading cause of methane in the atmosphere. Who knew, you know? But the point of it was how the technology had been used to create those enhancements in our society. I mean, we're all safely go to the cow pasture now. But the thing
That
that
kind of
was really
sounds like bull, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. It's the interesting thing about that session was not exactly the technology, but sort of the issues that she raised. One of which was we frequently get stuck with a sort of the proverbial stone in our shoes when thinking about the future. So we, get distracted by obstacles. Not that that would ever happen in the legal profession at all, But then she also talked about the need to, when you think about the future, to ask what if questions about the technology and the changes, which I thought was really interesting and sort of made me think about, what we were going to ask what if questions about some of the technology we were seeing, what would they be? What if what if law firms didn't have or couldn't use the leverage model anymore? Or what if an AI bot can competently do legal research without hallucinations? And a lot of questions. Her point was you have to ask these kind of what if questions because you don't know which of the things are going to happen. And in order to be prepared, you've got to think about the repercussions. And I could go on and on. Did write a bunch of stories about it because they were actually pretty easy to write. And they're all published by Above the Law, so you can take a look. I did go to one presentation on generative AI for lawyers. They did have a legal track that 4 or 5 people probably attended, but which was one of those presentations that instead of saying here's what it can do for a lawyer, it was let me show you some really complicated diagrams about how all this stuff works. But you can create your own internal LLM, and here's how you do it. And it's full of computer jargon. I had no earthly clue what he was talking about. And at the conclusion of which he goes, "See, it's really easy. It's a really easy process. I can show you how to do it if you want." So I can get me out of here. So anyway, make a long story short, it was a lot of really good and interesting sessions, and it takes a lot of time to go because it's spread out over 7 days. But I think it was worth it, and I appreciate the Above the Law, going to bat for me to get me the media pass so I could attend.
So Carolyn missed her drinking session tonight just for this. Never got to say a word. It's like
It serves me right. It really does
But
serve
she
me right. All these
she
interesting things I had to share.
but she did get to hear how those of us in the United States are really dealing with important topics like cow burping.
Right, and in the chat, yeah, I feel like I've entered the twilight zone.
Well, and cow burping is a big cause of global warming, which might raise temperatures by -A degrees. I don't understand Celsius. It doesn't make any
So,
sense.
yeah, I think there was an executive order today that was sort of mandating cow burping to continue.
Yeah.
that
I
and
barely noticed it.
that and the transsexual mice. We've got to tackle these problems.
So, Stephen, a new story that I'll just throw out there was the Free Law Project, my listeners' nonprofit, just published their own semantic search API. And for the listeners, it's kind of a way of cataloging information. And he has built one that's very specific to legal classification. So we all know that we have jargon. Jargon makes things weird. And I eagerly looked at the blog post where he talked about how he trained this semantic search. And oh my God, I did not understand half of what he wrote. Very complex. So I shared it far and wide and said, techies, tell me what this guy is talking about. Because it's going to take that level of partnership to figure this stuff out for lawyers. There is no way this is in my wheelhouse. I'll throw a link to the blog post in the chat for everybody.
That's awesome. Yeah, they're doing really cool stuff there at the Free Law Project. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Hope you all come back next week and see what we have. So we've got a very, very busy couple of weeks coming up for all of us between heading off to Legal Week, not too far
And
down
it'll
the
be
road,
at
and
2
then
Eastern, right? It'll be at 2 Eastern next
Right.
week, right? Or no, 3, like the usual time that it always is. Good to know.
It's 7 p.m. my time when it starts, and that'll be the same next week.
We will ping
So I know
Carolyn.
now.
Somehow I
So
feel
we'll
like,
have
when are you're coming to New York, right, for
I'm
Legal Week,
coming to
Carolyn?
New York. Yeah, so excited.
Okay.
And actually, hopefully I can join next week because there's been some really fun chats along Joshua's sort of lines, talking about unpicking what things really mean. Like, I've had some great chats at British Legal Technology Forum this week looking at agentic AI, which obviously there's no time to talk about now, but maybe maybe we can talk about some of that still next week because it'll still be very relevant. And sorry again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll still be talking about agentic AI by next week.
I think we will.
Couple of weeks it may be old school, but all right. Well, we'll be back next week, and I hope all of you will as well. Thanks for listening, watching, participating, being here. And Joshua, special thanks to you for sitting in.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Anytime, guys. Yeah.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Mhm.